Thank you for your patience. We're about to begin this services. Mrs. Carole Swerdlove. We welcome all of you here at the chapel as well as everyone online. Just a gentle reminder, folks, if you have a cell phone with you here at the chapel, please make sure it's in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. Officiating at today's service is Rabbi Cantor Nancy Landsman.
I did not have the privilege, and it really would have been a privilege and an honor to know Carole. Our hearts go out to her beautiful family, to Alisa and Aaron and Victor and DeAnna, Izzy and Frankie, and the rest of the relatives who are here. It means so much that you're here to lend your love and support. We begin the service with the traditional act of kriya, the tearing of the mourner's ribbon. We know everyone's hearts are torn. It's typically direct mourners who have the choice of either making a tear in their clothing or making a tear in the ribbon that has been provided. I see there are a few others. All of you in the front row have been given a ribbon, so if you could all just stand before making a tear. And by making the tear in the ribbon, which you'll do in just a moment after you repeat some words after me, is that it's to symbolize how your hearts are torn. It is typically only children who wear the ribbon over their heart, because there is no bond as unique and special as that between parent and child. Before making the tear, the Hebrew words that you say, I'd like you to repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. These words mean, praised are you, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, judge of truth. You can, from the bottom of the ribbon up towards the circular button, you can make a tear. You can tear it a little or as far as you'd like. You have a choice to wear this ribbon only today or the first week of mourning, or you can choose to wear it the period of Shloshim, 30 days. You also have a choice to wear this ribbon on the outside or tucked in the inside. If you choose to wear this torn kriya ribbon on the outside and people see you wearing this ribbon, hopefully they will understand that you are in a period of mourning and they will have compassion on you. Please be seated. So we gather here today to reflect on the life of someone who meant so much to all who are gathered, as well as those of you joining us remotely. Today, we are sad to say goodbye to Carole, but we're also here, as the family indicated to me, to celebrate her life. It is at such a time as this that we recognize the true values in life. We realize that all things fade and all things decay, except devotion and love, faith and trust. And from what I learned about Carole, she gave these as a daughter, a mother, mother-in-law, a grandmother, an aunt, a cousin, a relative, a friend. And she received from all of you an answering love and devotion. Her affection, answered by your own, made a circle of love that, although one link is missing, will yet remain whole and strong. The link of memory will continue to join you together. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a loved child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded." I think all of you that knew Carole knew that she succeeded in so many ways, not just as a mother, a wife, a daughter, a grandmother, a relative, or a friend. She succeeded in numerous ways in her life, and how blessed you have all been to have shared so many wonderful times with her. I understand that she had a great sense of humor, and Vivian Wade wrote, "A sense of humor is important, as shock absorbers are to a car. It helps to get over rough patches that come to us near and by far. A sense of humor is really needed, as a tightrope walker needs a pole. It helps to keep us well balanced. It can cheer and make joyful the soul. A sense of humor is necessary, as yeast is to the rising of bread. When raising our voices in laughter, happiness to others will spread. A sense of humor is important. The Bible and Proverbs we read, "A merry heart does good like medicine," which is very good medicine indeed. I chose to read this poem because in our meeting, it was Aaron who said that humor is like medicine. You said exactly what this author wrote in this poem, and I hope that you can recall the times you were with Carole and you all laughed together. Yet at times such as this, we look for comfort. And we often find when we turn to the book of Psalms, we find that comfort. In your service folders, and if you did not receive one upon entering the chapel, there are extras outside the chapel. You find the 23rd Psalm, a psalm that I think speaks to all of us, regardless of our faith or tradition. And so I'd like to invite all of you here, as well as those of you joining us remotely, let's join together in reciting the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Carole was blessed with so much love from her family. The author of the following is unknown. One of the greatest gifts that life can give to anyone is the very special love that families share. As years go by, it's good to know that there will always be certain people in our lives who care. For there are countless things that only families have in common, and memories that no one else can make. And these precious ties that bind a family together are bonds that time and distance cannot break. How fortunate we are when we have relatives to love us. It makes the world a happy place to be. Few gifts in life will last as long or touch the heart as deeply as the very special gift of family. It is my honor to first call upon Alisa, who would like to offer a few words about her mother.
Thank you all for coming to celebrate the life and the love and the light that was my mom, Carole Swerdlove. My mom was kind and funny and warm and supportive and brilliant and loving. And whenever we would be in a funeral like this, she would always lean next to me and say, "Remember to tell him I love my mother." Okay, Mom. And the next time we'd at a funeral, she'd like, "Remember to tell him I love my husband." And at the next one, she would say, "Remember to tell him I love my father." So here it is. My mom loved her husband. She loved her mother. She loved her father. She loved her dogs. Her kids, not so much. That was a mom-approved joke. My mom had a great sense of humor. She was naturally funny without even trying. I was in the family room one night watching a vampire movie, and she walked in, and I said, "Ma, how come vampires don't bite Jews?" And she goes, "Professional courtesy?" She's always had the right answer to me. My friend Eileen Angel is a writer, and she was writing a query letter for her book In Search of George Stephanopoulos. And she was saying, it's a humorous account. And I said, don't say humorous, say funny. She goes, what's the difference between humorous and funny? I said, I gotta ask the expert. So I go to my mom, I say, Ma, what's the difference between humorous and funny? She goes, humorous is when someone you don't like falls down the stairs. Funny is when they die. So you'd think she would be a comedy writer, but you know, she wasn't. Anyone who knew my mom knew she loved to shop. And she was really, really very good at it. And she had a very unique way of understanding finances regarding shopping. If it was 50% off, it was free because you saved as much as you spent. And if it was more than 50% off, they're paying you to take it. I remember a conversation between my mom and Dad when she was telling him she had gotten a dress for the matrimonial ball. And my dad said, how much did you spend, Carole? And she said, Nate, wait till you see how much I saved you. Guess how much I saved you. He said, how much did you spend, Carole? She says, wait till I tell you how much I saved you. How much did you spend, Carole? She says, okay, I'll tell you. I saved you $1,200. She goes, his dad says, how much did you spend, Carole? She said, $400, but I saved you $1,200. She was a style maven, and she was a true fashion plate. And even as a little kid, I thought she was glamorous. But as you could see from the story before, she never paid retail. That was a big no-no. So for her, big game hunting was going to Loehmann's or Saks, off Saks or Nordstrom Rack. And the Nordstrom shoe sale was like an annual event. You had to gear up and go. When the internet came along, she started to buy her Prada and Chanel purses from China. She called them her fake reals. And they even came with a fake letter of authenticity. So she loved a bargain and she loved to shop. And another place that she loved to do that are estate sales. And she used to schlep my dad before he died to go to estate sales with her. And when he would go, people would like give him stuff for free there. She never understood it. So she really liked going because she could get really good deals with my dad. And when he was too ill to go, she wrote me into going with her. And it became our thing. So every weekend, we'd hit a few house sales, and we'd go to lunch, then we'd hit a few more. And she would do the picking because she had such a great eye, and I would do the negotiating. And we were at one sale where she picked up some things, and the bill totaled to $12 or $10. And I looked at this parrot she bought, and it had a broken foot. And I said to the guy, "This parrot has a broken foot. It's garbage. You should be paying us to take it." He lowered the price to $8. Mom's like, "How did you do that?" I go, "I channeled Dad." So when my mom loved you, she loved you with an open heart. And whether you were a blood relation or an in-law or a friend, you were family, and there was no difference. She was your staunchest cheerleader and my most supportive ally and a listening ear, and there wasn't a thing she wouldn't do for you if it were in her power to do so. I've been very, very blessed to have many dear friends in my life. And my best friend from high school, Carolyn, was like a daughter to her. In fact, the last time Carolyn saw her, she brought her pie, and my mother said, "See, my real daughter brought me pie." I think actually Carolyn's her favorite daughter. She loved to eat, and she loved to cook, and when she'd have a really great piece of pie, she'd say, "That was a mighty fine pie." And I don't know why, but now I say that too. And with the accent and everything, I don't know where it came from. My mom was also a Francophile, and she loved everything French. She took French classes, and she became fluent in French, and I was really proud of her for that. And she used to go to France every year with my dad, and then when he passed, with her friend Ginger. And after my grandma died, she took Aaron and me to Paris, and we had a great time. And she wanted to show us everything she loved about Paris, and the food was great. Every meal was delicious. In fact, the worst meal we had was really good. So she wanted to make sure that we saw everything. So that means we had to do things pretty quickly. So I always joke that she took us on the rollerblade tour of the Louvre, because she'd be like, "See this painting? This painting's very important. Okay, next. See this painting? This painting's very important. Okay, next." I didn't realize how small actually the Mona Lisa was. But, I didn't get too long to see it because we had to go to the next one. My mom, if anyone who knows my mom knows she adored my father. My father adored her. They were really inseparable. And my dad, when they first met, took her everywhere. And he was her world, and she was his world, and they would go on dates every Saturday night. And I remember my dad coming out of his bedroom all dappered up, either whistling or singing, just because he was so happy to go out with my mom. And I really think that their relationship was like a love story for the ages. And I remember how they used to love to dance together, and they would sit on the couch next to each other and snuggle, which when you were a teenager like me was kind of gross. And I remember my mom, because she was always watching French movies and things, they were watching a movie together. And she was translating it for my dad, and there weren't any subtitles. So when my mom went into the kitchen, I said, "Ma, are you really translating that?" She said, "No, but your dad will never know the difference." When he died, she really had to figure out how to live in the world without him. And she reinvented herself, and I was really proud of that. She took classes at the University of Chicago on Proust and creative writing. And I know, maybe it was the time because of the morning, but in every story, everybody died. And I'm like, Ma, can't you make a story with a happy ending? So she wrote a story. One summer, I don't know if you guys remember the summer where Bono's luggage fell out of the plane. Well, she wrote a story about an old man from a very wealthy family who fell on hard times. And he was so poor that he had to put newspapers against the wall to keep the heat in the house. And he couldn't afford to fix the leaky roof or the heat or anything in the house. And one day, a movie scout knocked on his door and asked to rent his house for a movie. And they said, we'll fix the house and the roof, and the house will be perfectly lived in, we'll redecorate, and we'll give you $500,000, and we'll send you to the Bahamas while we shoot. Well, he signed the contract immediately, and that night he slept better than he's ever slept before. And you can guess what happened. That night, Bono's luggage fell on the roof, through the roof, and crushed him. So she was very quirky that way. Anyone who knows my folks, and especially my dad, knew he liked to play the ponies. And I came down one Saturday morning, and I saw my dad just doing this. I said, Dad, what's wrong? He said, she found my last place. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, your mom, she's coming to the races with me. And that became their thing. On Friday nights, they would get the racing form, and they would either study it together, or maybe they'd be in different rooms and then come together to discuss it. You'd hear them arguing, no, not that horse, this horse. No, I think this horse is better. And they would spend the day meeting friends and playing the ponies, and they had such a good time. And after my dad died, my mom still continued to do that, making new friends and seeing new friends there. And so I mention this because I like to think, now that my mom has transitioned, because I don't believe in death, I believe in transition, that she's up there with my dad and everyone who loves her. And I said to her once, I said, Ma, you'll come back and visit me? And she said, yeah, I will, but not for a while, I'll be busy. I said, okay. But I like to think that they're welcoming her, and she's at this great party where everyone who loved her who's passed has been there with her. And that eventually her and my dad will go to the races and play the ponies, and they'll win every bet. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coming and celebrating my mom with us and being so beloved by her. You're a wonderful family and friends, and we cherish you so. Thank you.
She said everything. She's really lovely. So you can imagine, Carole's children, we know that she was a lot. Carole was a lot. And as my sister said, she was courageous, she was determined, she was tenacious, she was generous and kind, she was loyal, she was incredibly loyal. And she could be forgiving. She was, very much. She was supportive, and she was proud. She was proud of all the people she loved. She found such joy in her family and her friends and people. She found her people, her family, in. And she had very high expectations. And that could be difficult, because with high expectations, well, we go back to her being demanding. But On balance, that brought out so much good in so many people. And it could be tough. And as her son, periods of self-doubt, but always with support. I never felt she wasn't behind me, my family. She was a fierce defender. And I think about how and why, and I think about her life, and I think about how I don't understand, didn't always understand, how to take her, why she might act the way she acted, because sometimes it was difficult as her son. And I didn't know enough, and I've learned as I've gotten older, and I've heard more and more stories. And I think about where she came from. She came from a farm, and she went to a city. She went from the farm to the city, and from the city she took the whole world. She took it all. And she come by it honest. Her mother ended up on the farm, and she didn't want to be there. So she went back to the city. But Minnie had a hard time. Her family wasn't easy. Her brothers, or her sons, my mother's brothers, were on the farm being active. Mom didn't have as much of a place there, I understand. It was harder for her, and Minnie wanted her nearby. So my mother got to grow up in the city with Minnie, and it was hard, and she was hungry. She would talk about going out with Minnie. They would go, there was a restaurant, and maybe someone here can help me remember the name. But there was a restaurant that my mother spoke about Minnie taking her to when they were on the west side, and they would go, I believe, south, about a mile or two. And she was so amazed by it. And the only other restaurant I really know she spoke of, and she spoke of it more lately, that my pop would take her to, called Shangri-La. And she couldn't believe it. And she would talk to me about these things, and I'm pretty sure most lately it was because of the restaurant that I have, that Mom was so involved with. And she loved that I found something that I loved to do, and that she, by proxy, could take such an interest and a love in. And she would talk about Shangri-La, and Pop would take her there, and he'd get so chickered. And they'd have such a good time. And the stories are important because I know that I'm going to need them. Today's a beautiful day, and we lost someone dear, special, and valuable. And it will be harder for me, I know, perhaps many of you, and I've told Isadora and Franklin. And the stories we get to share are the stories that help ease those times. And today's a day we get to have those stories together. Now, she paid a lot of attention to me in her way. She paid a lot of attention to Nate, and she always, as much as she loved us all, and she was behind him, there was a hierarchy with Mom, and that's ultimately what I take away. She belonged to Nate, and Nate belonged to her. And they married, and they truly were, as I was told, a married couple should be one soul and two bodies. And they were together, and they had their children, and they raised us, and they did for us, I'm sure, all the things that they had hoped could have been done for them when they grew up. And they did for each other even more, and they let us grow up more or less on our own, kind of, but there. But I got lost a lot. And what I know about my mother looking for me and looking out for me, I was allowed to wander. And as such, I would disappear. I had afternoon session in kindergarten. I was the afternoon kid. Kindergarten, when I was young, there was half the class would go in the mornings and then go home at lunchtime and be home, and then half the class would go after lunch to afternoon. And that was me. And that was my friend Maurice. And Maurice was a handful. And I would go to his house in the morning. I wandered out, Mom, I'm going. And she'd be, that was it. I'd pour a bowl of Captain Crunch, Captain Vitamin, King Vitamin, and head on out to Maurice. And I'm hanging out with him, and we're getting ready to go for lunch. We walk out of his house, and across the street was a new kid named Philip. Philip was morning kindergarten. And Maurice said, he's a new kid, let's go. We could go to his house. And so we went to his house and wandered in and went down. He had a pool table in the rec room, and we bumped the pool balls around, and we just stayed there, not a care in the world, until his mother from upstairs kicked us out. It was time for Philip to have a snack or some such thing. And so Maurice and I walk out of the house, and the lights come on, and the whoop, whoop, and the police cruiser rolls up and asks if we're Victor and Maurice, and we said, absolutely, and where are we going? And, well, we're going to kindergarten at 4 in the afternoon. So he threw me in the car, and he took me home. It was, about 75 yards away. And my mother's there on the lawn where I would often sit when I couldn't enter the house because maybe dinner wasn't right. And there she is, and she says, where were you? And I said, well, I was at Philip's house. And where's Philip's house? I said, I don't know. And she says, did you eat? And I said, no. Then she got angry. She didn't get angry at me. She never got angry. She didn't get angry at me. She got angry at Philip's mom. And that's how it started. So she was happy I'm home. The police were happy I'm home. They told me to promise that I wouldn't do that again. And of course, that wasn't true. I got lost on the March for Israel. That wasn't my fault, and that wasn't Mom's fault. I got lost in high school. My friend Sean bailed me out of that. I snuck out to a party friends were throwing that I was not allowed to go to. And I fell asleep, and I woke up at 3 in the afternoon the next day, and my folks were moving heaven and earth to find me. And I got the phone call that I'd better go home, and I did. And my mom left me to my father, which was always good cop, bad cop was odd with my folks because discipline was left to Pop, but Pop never got mad. It was always easy with him. And Mom was the good cop, but she would take it out. So I never knew what to do. But anyway, I didn't get in trouble then either. They said I looked miserable enough. It changed when I was in France. And yes, she let me go to France. She was so happy. And she was expecting me at a hotel. And they arrived early, and I wasn't there. And I should have been there by then, but I wasn't. And they panicked. And they called Paul Simon, our senator at the time. And he couldn't find me. And I showed up, and they were so happy I arrived, but I was incommunicado, and it was a terrible thing. And I learned that day that I really worried them, and I was sad for that time. And that time it stung. But yeah, I was on the outs for that day, for sure. But then she took me over. We went from England to France, and we ran around, and we ate, and it was all better. She was forgiven. But through all this, what I really saw, I saw my mother protect my father. I saw her lean on him and depend on him, and I saw her support him, and I saw her work with him to raise their children. And I saw him do for her and give her, provide for her a life so that she could take him around. And he joined her everywhere. And except his poker games. And what I've taken away from it finally was the thought that if I can be the husband to my wife, that my mom was the wife to her husband, I'll have really done something. And if I can be the husband to my wife that my pop was to his wife, I'll have really done something. And hopefully our children will come out of this okay. That would be nice. She showed us, and she didn't show us on purpose. She showed us because that's how she was. And as my sister said, how I feel, my mother was generous, and she would give. And she would give what she could. And I think she understood that the lesson I take is if we can give people what we can, we'll have done something. We're not here to give people what they deserve. Sometimes we can't, sometimes we shouldn't, but we can give people what we can. And she did. She was so proud. So finally we went and we were married in Niagara Falls. I know a lot of you were there and probably remember the wedding better than I do. And in Niagara Falls, we had a marvelous, marvelous rehearsal dinner. And DeAnna and I and Carole went ahead of time to Niagara Falls. We went in August, I believe. And we were planning a wedding in February, I think, initially. And my mother told us we were crazy. And, you know, she wasn't wrong. Niagara Falls in February is glorious. It's a glorious, magical place. It's an ice kingdom, and it is a sight to see. But when we were there in August and we discovered how beautiful it is in the summer and the fall, and we realized that, you know, a lot of people aren't going to go there more than this one time, and why are we going to drag them all the way up to Canada in the middle of winter? And she was right, and so we didn't, and we rescheduled it, and we did it later. But we wandered through Canada, and we looked for all the things we needed: a place to have the wedding, and a place to host a reception, and a place to stay, and chocolates and flowers and music, and a place for a rehearsal dinner. And she was mad at us because she found a restaurant, and we were late because we went to another place and had some snacks, and it was terrific, and we were sad we weren't going there. But my mother pulled us to another place, and it was lovely. She was so happy. And she said, "This is going to be the high point of the wedding." And I said, "Ma, I'm sitting right here." And she laughed, but that's what she was. And she wasn't wrong. But she was also very funny. She loved us. And she left us a world where we are together and we can support each other as best we can and think of her, and she will, I am sure, be there to continue, certainly to give me support through her memories. And the fact that I had the opportunity to introduce my children to her and let them have a life with her means a lot. And that I was able lately to cook for her. She learned her whole life, and she worked hard. And the last thing I want to bring up, it was surprising to me. I was surprised at how, as my sister said, how much she grew. When our pop died, and she took on so many new responsibilities, and she succeeded at them wildly. And she left us. She always took care. She took care of this whole event today. My sister, thank you, Lee, you did. But she set us up to succeed. I remember doing very little because she always did so much. And that was another lesson, watching her do so much. And now I do so much. I have a restaurant, and what happens is you do things in a restaurant, and you have lousy employees that don't do anything. And so what do? You do their jobs too. And it's terrific because I love them, and they're marvelous, and the place is great. The last gift my mother gave to me, she had me come home, and when I came home, and she would have me cook. And she would have me cook the things she remembered eating. As I wrote of, she chopped liver, and she liked the chopped liver. If she grew up eating chopped liver, I learned how to make it. I would make it for her. She said, oh, this is like what I remember. Pancakes, chicken soup. I would cook things from the restaurant. She would always ask, so what's the restaurant making? And I would tell her, oh, that sounds delicious. Make me that. Lamb chops. I was able to make the lamb chops. So happy to do that. And cooking is interesting because, well, I'm not a cook. I can cook, and I'm learning more, and I'm doing more. So it doesn't always come out right. And you know when it doesn't. Sometimes you hit a double. My old chef would say, they're not all home runs. Sometimes you hit a double. It's good enough to eat. It's not the best. But my mother would eat, and she'd always say, oh, it's so good. And whether she was telling me the truth or not, it didn't matter. Because it helped me. Even when she was asking me to do for her, she was helping me. And the generosity to do that is astonishing to me. The opportunity to cook for her and to bring her some comfort is astonishing to me. Because I wouldn't wish to do anything else. And it wasn't that it was an easy thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. And she loved it. And then she'd say, I've had enough. And that was nice. So she was here, she stayed with us, and I think she was ready to move on. She had enough, and we haven't. I haven't. What I have is my family. I have you and our families. And if I can help you, I hope I do, but I know you will help me. And thank you for that. Thank you for coming.
You want to take your mask? It was
Thank you.
beautiful.
Well, it's clear how loved Carole was. So just a few additional memories that were shared with me that I'd like to share with all of you that maybe you did not know about Carole. We all heard how intelligent she was. Did you know that she did the New York Times crossword puzzle in ink? How she was in a bowling league and how she did fundraising for JUF. And she loved her pearl business, and she was someone who just threw the best parties with this, an abundance of food. And we heard over and over how food was a big part of her life and how she was adventurous in trying new recipes, and she had this wide palette. But I think above all, what really stands out is you knew she was in your corner. She showed you who she was. She had this wonderful gift of engaging people and laughing with you, making you feel good, giving you great advice. She enjoyed making people happy. What a blessing. And did she love her grandchildren to shop with, to talk about the stock market, to go out to eat, but mainly shopping, right? Shopping. We know that none of us can live on physically forever. But we do believe in our Jewish faith that our spirit, our soul, can live on forever. And the way that that happens is by all of us who are still here continue to share the stories, the memories. Continue to talk about Carole. Document your memories in a variety of ways. Technology is always changing. I don't think a piece of paper will go out of style anytime in our lifetime. I could be wrong. So find a variety of ways to document your memories so that one day, if Izzy or Frankie decide to get married, have children, they will know, your children will know about your grandma and the incredibly loving, supportive, glamorous, they showed me pictures of her, she was glamorous, woman who lived her life and adored her husband and her children and her grandchildren so fiercely. So above all, Carole loved to celebrate life with the people she loved. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of the righteous, is forever a blessing. And to that we say, Amen. The author of the following is unknown. A life well lived is a precious gift of hope and strength and grace from someone who has made our world a brighter, better place. It's filled with moments sweet and sad, with smiles and sometimes tears, with friendships formed and good times shared, and laughter through the years. A life well lived is a legacy of joy and pride and pleasure, a living, lasting memory our grateful hearts will treasure. I invite you to turn to your service folders for our two concluding prayers, the El Malei Rachamim and then the Mourner's Kaddish. If you are able to rise for these prayers, I invite you to please rise. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Pamromim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanvei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Uteorim Kizar Arikia Et nishmat chayrisa shalecha leolama bal harachamim yastirei habeseter kinafecha leolamim bitzror hachayim et nishmata Adonai unachalata B'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure, whose shine is the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of Carole Swerdlove, who has gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring her under the cover of thy wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may her repose be peace. Amen. And now on the back of your service folders, you find the mourner's Kaddish. It is said that the angels brought this prayer down from heaven. It possesses wonderful power. Truly, if there is any bond strong enough to link heaven to earth, it is this prayer. There is no reference to death in this prayer. Rather, we affirm God's glory and omnipotence. So let us join together now as we exalt God's name with these traditional words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divrach hiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushpechata v'nechamata, da'amiram ba'alma v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabbah min shamaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. May the author of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us. And to that we say, Amen. Please be seated.
The Shiva will be observed at the Swerdlove residence at 560 Hunter Road in Wilmette today, following the service at 6 p.m., with the Shiva Minyan at 4:30 p.m. And there is parking available across the street from the residence. And I'd just like to let you know that it's listed in the service folder here as well as online. The memorial contributions can be to any charity of your choice. And also, please note that to write a message or record a video for Carole's family, there's a QR code listed inside the service folder. If you did not receive one, they are available as you exit the chapel this afternoon. And for those of you joining us online, there's also a record video message that you can access online. This does conclude this service. Thank you.